the Russians invade a small Scottish loch, a fleet of factory ships to process British fish. The local grocer delivers daily by boat. The fisherman's mission offers free Russian Bibles.
They were very good to us.
The publican went on board and got plastered.
You couldn't fault them on that.
It's all part of the autumn mackerel season, and, say the critics, part of what's wrong with the common market. The common market fisheries policy, like the common market agricultural policy, is in disarray. At stake, the survival of the fish in our waters and the livelihood of the fishermen. Since the beginning of the year, and only after years of difficult negotiation, there has been a common market fisheries policy. It's supposed to fix quotas to ensure that the fishermen of each country get a fair share and that fish conservation is respected. But unfortunately, the partners can't agree on the share-out. The result, say the scientists, is an attitude of smash and grab in which the fish are the losers. In this case, it's the mackerel. High up on the top left corner of Scotland, there are somewhat remarkable scenes to be found this week, the height of the mackerel season, as the British, Danish, Irish and Russian fishermen compete to catch the mackerel, and what seems like the entire fleet of communist factory ships wait to process them. This report by Peter Gill.
A Scottish fisheries protection launch with a mission to perform. Ahead, the Soviet ship Kronstadtskaya Slava has just arrived in Scottish waters. She's one of a fleet of factory ships from behind the Iron Curtain, here to buy and process British fish. The fisheries officer checks what's already on board the Russian visitor. This picturesque West Highland village, home to 1,000 people, is a community not normally at the centre of international trading relations, until the autumn, that is. And the arrival of a fish, now a Euro fish, the mackerel. The old fish auction bell now heralds a worldwide business.
At 15.60, 15.60, £15.60. At 15.60, £15.60 80, it's £16. At £16 bid. At £16.
These fish just a sample from trawlers weighed down with hundreds of tons of them. These buyers representing interests right round the world.
£17.20.
Along with Bird Island and the seals, the tourists now have a new attraction, the factory ships. Ahead of them, 37 East Bloc vessels. 500,000 tons of communist shipping. They're called the Kioridikers, because this is a modern gold rush. They're not fishing because these are now exclusive common market waters. They wait for the fish to be brought to them. They are nevertheless the symbol of a major conservation problem for Western Europe, as they take and process 70% of British mackerel. There are now 8 Soviet ships anchored off Alipore. They include the largest in the whole fleet at 16,000 tons. East Germany has 14 factory ships at work, the largest number of any nation. The production decks on each need up to 200 men and women to work them. The Bulgarians claim to have discovered Alipore some 6 years ago and have been shipping mackerel back to their domestic market ever since. The Poles are distinguished by the oldest Kioridikers in the fleet, providing, though, a valuable addition to the Polish diet. It's an eye-opener for the trippers.
I never realised that it was so vast. And thinking of all those ships filled with mackerel, my God, there can't be many left.
I didn't know there was anything at all out there. We were amazed at the number that was there, and not a British one amongst them.
I wondered what their reaction would be, the Russians, to us having our ships so close to their shore. And I would think if they wanted to invade us, they got the ideal spot here because nobody seems to know about it.
There could be hard currency in it for the Kioridikers if they ever organise tourist trips of their own, but for now their hospitality is limited. Not long ago, the landlord at the Seaforth, Ian Boyd, took a youth group aboard and feared for the consequences if the lads got out of hand.
The Russians were very good to them. And the day ended in the galley where they laid out a tea for them and buns and all sorts. They really were very good to them. And the first mate, who was a Latvian, who spoke very good English, he sort of said to the leaders, you know, well, there's no room for you here. I have laid out a repast in my cabin, and you come up there, you see. And we didn't want to leave them alone, because boys will be boys. And his sort of answer to that was, well, don't worry, the physiotherapist and her assistant will look after them, which we poo-pooed. And the physiotherapist came through the door, and she had everything a man could want: great big arms, moustache, hairy chest. So we went up, and he introduced us to Russian vodka. Then he introduced us into Russian champagne. Then he introduced us to Russian beer, and we ended up on Polish white spirit. The result was the boys went back down the gangplank in groups of 5, well-behaved, sat on the boat, well-behaved, and the leaders all come down, plastered out their brains.
What the Klondikers wait for now is mackerel in abundance. And it's massive trawlers like the Radiant Star from the east coast of Scotland that have come to find them.
Big forwards.
The skipper and owner is 31-year-old Alec Wiseman. His sophisticated gear is not just for navigation. Steering the boat is almost incidental to the night's work. An array of sonar detection devices enable him to chart the sea bottom and the fish shoals as well. By dawn, one of the scanners is showing a mackerel shoal, quite distinct off a rock ledge. £80,000 worth of net being readied for action. This is the purse seine net. An envelope capable of trapping up to 1,000 tons of fish at one go. The only real constraint is the fear that the volume of fish might break the net. In Ullapool, the mackerel season is only just underway. Within the next 6 weeks, a colossal 150,000 tonnes of mackerel, part of Britain's common market quota, is due to be caught. Other nations have their quotas to fish in Scottish waters too, and very often exceed them. 100,000 tonnes of the fish that comes to Ullapool will go direct to the hungry Klondikers. The rest is landed across the pier to be sold in the British and European markets. 10 years ago, no one really bothered with mackerel. To the trawlers, it wasn't a commercial fish. Now it sustains an international industry. But a combination of overfishing and common market failures is now threatening the future of that fishery. Round the headland from Ullapool, 2 men in a boat catching mackerel the old-fashioned way. They're attached to Scotland's Marine Laboratory in Aberdeen and have for the first time managed to keep mackerel alive for behaviour studies. Conservation concerns have prompted a growing volume of research into mackerel. The mackerel's turns of speed and its stamina, travelling up to 80 miles a day, have been determined. But what really troubles the scientists is the future of mackerel stocks. Dr. Stephen Lockwood of the government's Marine Laboratory in Lowestoft.
Because the quantity of fish being taken is far more than it should be, the size of the stock is going down each year. This is inevitable. It's exactly the same as if somebody had deposited a sum of money in the bank, and rather than just living on the interest which that sum of money earns, they are taking the interest and they are also taking some of the capital. Sooner or later, there will be no money in the bank. If the international fishing industry continues to catch mackerel the way it is, without any effective international control, then sooner or later there will be no mackerel left to catch.
Nothing the scientists say has so far discouraged the Eastern Europeans from coming to Ullapool for the mackerel harvest. British immigration and customs are both on hand in Ullapool for the mackerel season. Once checked on board ship, foreign seamen are free to roam. One East German captain roamed all the way to the bus stop earlier this month and then defected. Beneath Ullapool Pier, a reminder of political realities. A Soviet lifeboat up against a pole, with another Russian making movement impossible. On shore, a further touch of home, an offer in Russian at the Fisherman's Mission. Douglas Kime is the mission superintendent and translates the message.
Well, we're advertising there in Russian, Bibles free here. Bulgarian is very similar, so the Bulgarians will be able to sort it out as well.
And these are the Bibles, are they?
These are the Bibles, yes. One in Bulgarian and this other one's in Russian.
How many takers have you had from these?
Last year, the Bulgarians, we gave about 30 Bulgarian Bibles out, and this year we've given 3 Russian ones out. 2 Russian ones about 3 years ago.
So not a huge number.
Not a huge number, but of course they've got to take them on board and best they can, I suppose.
I suppose actually smuggle them on board.
I'm afraid.
Of course, next door in the newsagent, it's a different sort of literature thereafter, isn't it?
They sell all sorts of literature, of course, and girly magazines, which of course go down well with the seamen and the fishermen, I would think.
Rather more so perhaps than the Bible even.
I'm afraid so, yes, rather more so.
Up the road, another kind of rivalry. John MacLeod, Ullapool born and bred, owns the VG store. He's one of 2 grocers who have made it their business to trade with the East.
Saconia, John MacLeod, could I speak with your master, please? Over.
But master just 10 minutes ago left with lifeboat to the shore.
I see, that is clear. I will be calling at your ship at 2 o'clock with provisions. Is that clear? Over.
Okay.
Across the way is the rival McDonald's supermarket.
Now, can we just check them off as we're putting them in? Yeah, you've done that. Make sure we get them all right.
Charles MacDonald says that trading with the Klondikers adds 2 months to his summer season. On the pier, he supervises the loading. He's always enjoyed something of a monopoly with the Russians. Helping him is Linda Hammond. She used to work for Mr. MacLeod, but defected at the end of last season. So is the competition between them pretty intense?
Oh, quite a bit of rivalry. I think it's best for the boats because I think they then get the best price. Because obviously if one man had the whole lot, then there's no competition.
And what form does that competition take? Is it a matter simply of, getting out first to a new boat coming in, or what?
Yes, I would say that's got a lot to do with it. And of course, if you had the boat last year and it's the same captain, the chances are you'll get the boat this year if they were satisfied with your service.
But this year, Mr. MacLeod is making inroads even on Soviet territory. He claims 2 of the Russians as his own, and to prove it, one has sent its lifeboat for supplies. Communication problems are common. John MacLeod was once asked for 3 tins of rice. It turned out to be 3 tons of rice.
Yes.
Lemon, yeah.
And watermelon.
Watermelon,
yes,
yeah.
I see. It is now only 2 case eggs and that's all.
2 case eggs, and that is...
Tomorrow you have visit on board my ship,
yeah.
And deliver note and no problem.
No problem.
Thank you very much. I'm very obliged for you.
Okay.
Nice work if you can get it, though not appreciated by everyone. The only strictly local fishing from Ullapool is for prawns and lobsters. Billy McRae, for one, takes a pretty dim view of the Klondikers.
I don't get any benefit, no. All I get's damaged gear and quite a bit of loss, you know. I've lost about £400 to £500 worth this year already, gear, damaged gear.
Well, now how does it get damaged?
Well, when the ships come in...
That's the big factory ships?
Big factory ships. They drop their moorings and they're okay. But then they decide sometimes, if the weather comes up, that they'll go and shift their moorings to maybe a mile away from where they were told to drop their hook, you know. I haven't got any compensation. I've been losing gears in the last 4 or 5 years now.
But the interests of the local boats come second during the great mackerel race. For without the East Bloc ships, there would be no market for what the Scottish trawler fleet is allowed to catch. The trawlers servicing the factory fleet are already laid up for 4 months in the year, and the home and European markets for mackerel could never give them a living. One of the East Coast skippers spells out the economics of modern trawling. Andrew Tate.
We're very dependent on this last 4 months of really good fishing. We're looking for about 40 or 50,000 pound every week from now to Christmas. And if we're not round that mark, when it comes to Christmas, we're going to be in the wrong side.
Out at sea on the Radiant Star, it's proved an unproductive night's work. Even when the fish were found, they couldn't be netted. The seabed was too rocky to risk £80,000 worth of net. The only beneficiaries of the night's work are the seabirds that dive on rotten mackerel left in the net from the last catch.
Instead of the fish showing or catching every night, you might have a 2 or 3 night break between the catches.
What do you think is going to happen over the years to come to this fishery?
Well, I think the British fleet now is being very, very strictly policed, and I think that unless our European partners are policed likewise, I don't think we've got a future. I think they've got to be policed the same as we're being policed if the stocks are going to survive.
The policing of the trawler fleet is conducted by ships of the Scottish Fishery Protection Service. From the bridge of the guard ship Jura, stationed off Ullapool, every movement is scrupulously monitored.
Control ship Jura. Control ship Jura.
This is the guard ship Jura. Could you tell me how much fish you have on board, please, over?
Approximately 25-30 ton of mackerel aboard. We're approaching Annet Bay from the...
Ours is the strictest inspection service in Europe. Others, the Danes are always singled out, are nowhere near as tough.
Annet Bay. Over.
Okay, standing by in channel 70.
Physical inspection of the catch is often the order of the day. The catch figures are often disputed between the skipper and the fishery protection officers. Refrigerated fish tanks on board the trawler are measured and the tonnage is calculated. The final figures are vital to the boat's earnings because so detailed is the management of this fishery that trawlers are restricted to an individual fortnightly quota. And the details are passed dutifully on to the Fisheries Office control room in Ullapool.
Hello, Ullapool base, Jura, Jura.
Jura, 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 Ullapool base, loud and clear, Sam. Pass your message, please, over.
Good morning again, Joe. We'll just bring you up to date now on what's coming in.
The amount of fish the Klondikers take is monitored with the same precision.
That doesn't ring true somehow or other, so I'd appreciate
On the wall behind the fisheries inspector, an up-to-date list of the East Bloc fleet.
Okay, 276. And he's going to the Klondiker Granites. The Granites, over.
Jura, Jura, Jura. Yes, all loud and clear, Sam. All copy.
As trawlers move up to unload their catches on the factory fleet, the Klondikers have every reason to appreciate the Scottish welcome. The East Bloc pays minimal harbour dues. They even pay less for their mackerel out in the loch than they would over the pier. The price to them is fixed. In a government marine laboratory, the end result is minutely assessed. Mackerel eggs are counted in an effort to assess the dwindling population. Scientists say the decline has been rapid and alarming. I asked Dr. Lockwood when he thought the mackerel would run out.
That is very much a sort of crystal ball gazing exercise, but if they continue fishing as they have done in the last 3 or 4 years, then it's almost certainly going to be by the end of the decade.
378.
Further laboratory work confirms the grim forecast.
546.
But the warnings seem to go unheeded by the fishing industry and by European politicians alike.
Male 8.
Last year, the scientists began by recommending a total common market catch of 274,000 tonnes. But the agreement reached by common market politicians added another 100,000, a total catch of 375,000 tonnes. Official figures suggest the actual catch was 410,000 tonnes. But according to the scientists, that was a gross underestimate. They say that at least 600,000 tonnes were caught, mainly in British waters, by common market fishermen. And it is between those two figures, the one recommended by the scientists and the actual catch, more than double, where the problem lies. Final responsibility for the mackerel fishery now lies with the Common Fisheries Policy in Brussels. I put the discrepancy in those figures to a senior official in the Common Market Fisheries Directorate, John Pearson.
I don't disbelieve the scientists, certainly. I think it is certainly a matter for concern that one can have different kinds of total figure for catches and landings. Certainly a matter of concern.
Is it fair to say, though, that the Common Fisheries Policy, after these 7 or 8 months, is in a fair degree of disarray?
I think that's a question which one of the fisheries ministers of the 10 would be happy to talk about. I think as a mere bureaucrat, I'd better simply say that the Commission has made its proposals for Western mackerel and for scores and scores of other stocks for 1983. We're waiting for Council agreement. We're encouraging the Council of Ministers to reach the point of agreement. And in the meantime, we are administering the totals of last year.
What happened last year, of course, was that the politicians, doubtless not entirely arbitrarily, but the politicians added 100,000 tonnes of paper fish, someone described them.
It was a temporary cost of reaching the Common Fisheries Policy.
Those 100,000 tonnes of fish sacrificed for European unity?
Yes, cheap at the price.
A world away from Brussels, John MacLeod, the village grocer, zooms across the loch. He has to catch up on that promised delivery of fresh eggs to his new Russian customer. In front of him, the largest East Bloc fleet in Western waters. They'll be there another 2 months. As a trading arrangement, it works like clockwork. In terms of the fish and those that live by them, there could be a disastrous end to the great mackerel race.